Welcome to another Sister Scoot where we are doing all of Marvel news. Just kidding. We're doing the top 3 topics in Marvel news for the week. And we're going to start with the fact that Doctor Strange is not going to be in Doomsday, which seems strange.
Pun intended. Yeah. Honestly, I remember when you sent me this, Katie sent it to me and I was like, but the second half is, but he's going to have a big role in Secret Wars. And I literally was like, no shoes.
Duh.
Literally read the comic.
Yes.
You're not giving anything away with the second half. But to what you were saying about him not being in Doomsday, I do think it is weird. Look, maybe they're breaking the mold of one directly leading into the other, a la Infinity War leading into Endgame. And yes, I'm sure they will lead in some way, but not necessarily be direct sequels the way that those two were. If that's the case, fine. If it's just another movie in the building block, like Avengers is, or like even Age of Ultron is, into getting into Endgame, it's a piece of the puzzle, but not necessarily an immediate predecessor. That's fine. I guess that then makes sense. Maybe that leaves some room for a Doctor Strange 3 to prep us in between. If that's the route they're going, I'm actually okay with that. I guess I'm just that part's a little bit up in the air if they're going to pull an Infinity War Endgame type scenario.
I actually think the part for me that's up in the air is the Doctor Strange 3 part. Because we actually just talked about this a couple weeks ago where we were discussing, what was it? Maybe it was actually last week, Doctor Strange 3 and Shang-Chi 2. And we were like, this seems weird. We're not unhappy they're working on these projects, but especially with Doctor Strange, the timing with Doomsday and Secret Wars is pivotal. It's very critical to the stories that they're telling. So I think my whole here is, if you're going to manage to fit Doctor Strange 3 in before Secret Wars, I won't complain. But I think if you're going to sit here and tell me he's not going to be in Doomsday, which theoretically, to your point, could or could not, but we're supposedly hearing is going to lead into Secret Wars, why? And then you're not going to have Doctor Strange 3 until after all of this. Why? I don't even need to ask more to that question. It's simply why to me. So I definitely think this is strange. I also think this is, if I'm remembering correctly, a backed up statement, because I'm pretty sure initially he was like, yeah, I'm going to be filming both these movies. And so I'm pretty sure this is Benedict Cumberbatch actually backing up on the fact that he's no longer, or he's not going to be in Doomsday, but I'm almost 100% sure he said he was.
I do kind of remember that he said he was going to be doing that soon. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, to what you were saying about Doctor Strange 3, I think this kind of goes back to what we were talking about last week and the potential that these movies do get pushed. Now, it sounds like he was saying that they're going to start filming, but if they're not filming yet, and they do, what you were saying, they do an Infinity War Endgame type scenario, they film those two together. So,
right.
And it's the Russo brothers, so I would assume they would do the same. That's a really
I think it's a little hard
process
to do that, though, in this case, if you think about it.
It can be. I mean, I still don't understand what Doomsday is even about, to be honest. I have a really clear picture of Secret Wars. It has a direct comic line. I know people are talking about what comics Doomsday could be pulling from. I don't think we have a clear source material in my, it's not, at least let me say, I don't think we have a confirmed source material. So it is hard for me to be how are they doing this? Because I can't even say, I understand that story directly leads in, or I see how they're going to make them lead in, or where they might need to pull in different characters, or certain characters might not make it from one to the other. It's just so hard because that movie to me is the biggest question mark. And I just don't really even understand I understand where it fits on a slate, but narratively, I do not understand what the role it's going to play is.
That's fair. And I think we go down a whole rabbit hole there, but we'll leave it where it's at now and move on to our next topic for today's episode. And that's Giancarlo Esposito, who's obviously going to be in the upcoming Captain America film, as in 2 weeks, says he's talking a little bit more about the whole Sidewinder, which I guess is his character, which I'm not going to lie, didn't know his name. Obviously I did. We were prepping for Captain America predictions, but didn't actually until that moment. But to me, this is confirming there's more, and he doesn't go down with the ship, if you will.
Yeah, so I think it's going to be definitely interesting. Knowing that he's hinting at more for Sidewinder is really cool because, and we'll get
to that. Did I say Sidewinder?
You did. I was just going to let you go, but
I have been up since 5:45 this morning, which is unheard of for me. So I am so tired. Ignore it. Ignore it.
I was going to let you ignore it, but you decided to call it out. So that's
I had to call it out. That is so embarrassing. I'm just so tired. I promise, guys, I can read and I can pronounce things, just not in this moment.
I'm like 95% sure it's Sidewinder. But anyway, getting back on track. So for Sidewinder, and we'll definitely be talking about this more in our predictions. So those will be coming out after this airs. This is me telling you our future episode that's on the way. Definitely will talk about Sidewinder, but he's the leader of the Serpent Society. And so I do think it makes a lot of sense for him to, like you said, not go down with the ship, make it out of this movie, because if the Serpent Society doesn't already exist in Cap 4, which is still TBD, like has he already formed it, or is he kind of acting as a lone wolf and then we'll go on to form it? If it's the latter, I can see that being a problem for Cap or another hero later down the road, and that's why they're choosing to keep him. I also think, we say this about a lot of villains, but it would be a waste to use Giancarlo Esposito, who is one of the best villain actors, period, the end, in all of TV and movies, to only be in one role. I mean, obviously you had folks like Christian Bale, and Michael B. Jordan had one cameo, but he really was in one film as the villain. But Giancarlo has made a career out of being iconic villains. And so, like, for me, like, that would be such a waste. And I do think it makes a lot of sense for him to, just continue on and really build out that Serpent Society and play that narrative all the way out.
I think you make fair points. I'm actually going to liken the Serpent Society to the equivalent of Steve's Hydra. And I could see them kind of playing that role a little bit. Obviously, I feel like by Civil War that ended. I think the Winter Soldier was really the final piece of that. So it could be the whole trilogy. It could not be, but I do think...
Sam's Hydra? You mean Sam's Hydra? You said
No.
Steve's Hydra.
Steve's Hydra. I'm saying the Serpent Society could be the equivalent to Steve's Hydra.
Oh, for Sam. Sorry. It's also been a long day for me, so we're clearly...
We're doing great, as you can see.
Struggle busing over here.
That's why I was like, no, I'm pretty sure I said what I meant to say here, but okay. Yeah, I just think that I could see the similarities and having them kind of be a through line. We obviously saw it with Steve's first 2 movies, more specifically, so I think having something like that and having it play a bigger role could be kind of cool. But moving on to our last topic then, Adrien Brody, possibly in the MCU. And before I give it to Taylor, I'm also going to say seemingly being fan casted as Magneto. And this is important because I think this opens a bigger discussion.
Yeah. So, I mean, look, Adrien Brody's a fantastic actor, and I would be happy to see him in any role. He really wants to work with a high caliber director, which I don't think the MCU has a problem with, in the sense that they're able to attract really high caliber directors.
For sure.
Great. Sounds good. Looks like we're going to hit that, check mark pretty easily. And he wants to work on an interesting character, which I don't think, the MCU has any lack of, or I should say Marvel Comics has any lack of. Obviously, the MCU has done quite a few already, but there's hundreds of characters in the comics, and with rich backstories and an entire roster of mutants that still have to come, one of the most complex being, of course, Magneto. And I think, to what you were kind of hinting at, especially, and I was reading an article saying the same thing, especially after, X-Men 97 elevating Magneto and that character the way that it was, I do think we need an actor, and this is nothing against Ian McKellen or Michael Fassbender, because they both did great jobs in the role, but I think we need a really, really strong actor to be able to play this character, because if the MCU is going to elevate this character in any level the way that they did in X-Men 97, then this is going to be an intense and incredible role that you need someone who's got the chops to do, and I think Adrien Brody does.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know him too much. Like, I recognize him as an actor. I don't think I've seen too much of what he's actually been in. I think personally the bigger discussion that it opens for me, and I want to avoid going down the rabbit hole here, but I want to at least address it, is some of the rumors of people that we're getting to play certain roles. We're all over the map.
Yeah.
Age-wise. And I know this has kind of been our discussion going into it in general. Are they going to be older? Are they going to be younger? How are they going to do this? Will there be the time jumps, Days of Future Past? All of it. Like, I know this has been an ongoing discussion, but again, I'm going to avoid going down the full rabbit hole here, but I just want to say, I mean, we've talked about Sadie Sink possibly being Jean Grey, Cynthia Erivo as Storm. Already right there is
huge
quite
difference.
an age gap. And Sadie Sink looks young. I mean, she could still, to me, pass as a 16-year-old, and she does in Stranger Things. Cynthia Erivo does not look like a 16-year-old anymore. And then now, in comparison, you have Adrien, who, if you're going to have a younger Magneto, well, now I'm starting to kind of wonder, like, what's the spectrum going to look like? Because he could be in the same age, and he probably is in the same age range as Cynthia. Well, Storm and Magneto are not meant to be the same age. So I think that's kind of where I'm starting to be like, okay, and now these aren't confirmed pieces of the puzzle, but if they are possible pieces of the puzzle, that's kind of where I'm still curious about, like, okay, what's this going to actually look like, though? Because the pieces aren't adding up for me.
Yeah, no, that's such a good point because, and we talked about this a lot in our fan casting, you could go kind of the OG route where they are all in their late 20s to even late 30s and kind of in that route. And then you have the Professor X and Magneto in their, 60s. And you could go, and have everybody aged up a little bit. Or you could go the kind of soft reboot route, which it really sort of was and wasn't a soft reboot in the sense that it was almost like the OGs and they were like going from the beginning again.
Right.
I guess you could even split the middle. So there's like 3 real options, but you have to be consistent in your choice. And Magneto and Professor X need to be 15 to 20 years older than everyone else. And to your point, Adrien Brody and Sadie Sink, that works, right? Like that age gap to me makes sense, especially because Jean is kind of on the younger side, I think, even within the X-Men. But then, if you're not going to be consistent, then it just throws the whole balance off. So there's a lot of conflicting reports. To your point, none of these are confirmed, but I'll be curious to see like which of the 3 routes they choose, because that's kind of going to dictate a lot when it comes to storytelling.
I agree. And that was the first thing I noticed when I was kind of doing my research on this topic was I was like, this will be interesting if because especially the character they're supposedly saying him to be. I mean, this one's very specific about age. You have to have this character be older than 90% of the rest of the cast. That is just a fact. Sorry. Yeah. But that has been this week's Sister Scoop. Make sure you guys join us again next week as we take on 3 more Marvel news topics. And also make sure you guys are keeping up with the podcast as we are already starting and have already started our Captain America coverage. So we're really excited for that. Make sure you guys are listening in the meantime and get your tickets. But we'll see you guys next week. See ya.